Perfect, thank you very much. Kelvin, thank you for talking to us, of course. The big question, we'll talk about the kind of postponement of the season in a second, but Conference fans will basically want to know, with football clubs talking openly in the media, with Barnet as well, saying how much of a financial kind of crisis this is for the clubs. How are the finances looking at the Cobblers, and how worried are you, and how kind of able to deal with this current situation are you?
Well, I think the reality is that, you know, this is going to be a financial challenge for every single football club, for sure. Every single business, you know, in the country, every single person are going to be impacted by this from an economic and financial position. Obviously, you know, we're not here to discuss the health aspect of the virus, but that is, you know, that's its own problem as well. But in terms of the football club and the economics of the football club, you know, it's very concerning what we're going to face. We're in a pretty nice position in that any debt in the football club is to David and myself, so that puts us in a bit of a stronger position. And we haven't, you know, we've always funded the club, and we've always paid the bills on time and paid people on time, and so we haven't had the issues of some football clubs, you know, even before the virus in terms of cash flow. But you know, some football clubs are going to be facing uncertain futures, I would think, in terms of, you know, if a football club had a cash flow issue before this, and, you know, we've now got a possibility of delayed income at best, or even lost income, then it's going to present a whole heap of new challenges.
And I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Obviously, because there's no definitive end in sight. How do you plan for potentially weeks, but potentially months, potentially no end to the season, and what impact will that have? You're kind of talking that in the short term you'll be okay, but what if the season doesn't restart? And
I think we have to. Sorry. Yeah, I think we have to look at. I think there are some short, medium, and longer term issues, and obviously the short term is cash flow now and income not coming in now, but you're always making those decisions with the assumption or the hope that the income will come eventually. I think there's a big meeting today with the EFL to talk about some of those issues, and not just the short, but also the medium term. What happens for the rest of the season, and can we finish it, etc. And what do we do if we can't? But the main conversation, I think, is going to be in the short term, and are there some solutions that the Football League can potentially advance? Monies that we're due for the rest of the year? Is there conversations with HMRC to delay some of the payments while we're not getting income in? You know, unfortunately, you know, it's like any business. If you've still got your expenses, wages and staff and players, etc., but if you have no income coming in, that presents a significant challenge. In the medium term, you know, the next real challenge comes with if the season does get cancelled or null and void, and we lose 4 games worth of income, and there's no possibility of getting that back. So then I think it becomes a different conversation with the Football League and the authorities about how do we sustain that, because that's going to have a significant impact on all football clubs.
And just on that point there, Kelvin, just away from the Cobblers, we've seen clubs have already been in trouble this year, especially in the lower leagues, and not being able to pay. When the season restarts, if it restarts, and if we're even looking into a new season come August, come September, could you see real problems for clubs in the lower leagues? And potentially, we're talking a number of clubs going out of business. I think there's going to be some significant challenges. Listen, I feel Northampton we're in a relatively strong position, but we're going to have significant challenges going forward in terms of, you know, the finances, and we're going to have to find ways to replace that income, or whether it's subsidy, grants, you know, loans, etc. from government. I'm not sure, but there's going to be clubs that have also got loan repayments, existing loan repayments that they've got to pay. They might have mortgages on the grounds. You know, they might have loans that they've already used to pay players in previous months. So
yes, you can't underestimate, I don't think, the financial challenges that are out there facing football clubs at the moment, and all businesses. But we're specifically talking about football clubs. But I don't think we can underestimate the impact this could have when you've potentially taken away a quarter of their income over the course of a season.
And in a sporting sense, obviously the EFL's meeting this afternoon. What conversations have you had with them? And it's obviously the priority is to try and get the season finished. But is there a point where we get to where it just can't be finished for just practically it can't be finished? Is there a date that we can get to where that's it? The season has to be over.
We've had a lot of conversations as chairman and James with other chief execs. We would have had last few days has been a lot of time on the phone and discussing various possibilities and issues and etc. and solutions, and then our representatives are now talking to, in terms of our league representatives, are now talking to the board as board members today, I believe, with the Football League about some of those conversations to represent those to the board, and the board will be making some decisions. But I think from our perspective, the number one priority is to finish the season. Once you go beyond the health and safety aspect of making sure that everyone's safe and well, and the human aspect of this virus, from a football perspective, you want to finish the season. From an competition integrity perspective, you want to finish the season. But that's on the premise that if you look at the reality, and if you looked at UEFA looking to complete seasons by June 30th, even with the start date of April 4th, that really only gives you 13 weeks to finish 9 games, and also the playoffs, which tend to take 2 weeks themselves. So that could potentially be a tight time period anyway. But then once you start pushing, and we've all got our opinions probably on April 4th, and we are all working towards that date in some way, but probably if we're realistic, we're looking at it being a bit later than that. But that pushes another couple of weeks, and suddenly you're in 11 weeks to finish the season. And then realistically, if that pushes a month, then you're at 9 weeks to finish 9 games in the playoff system. That becomes very challenging. Our view, I think, at the football club is you've either got to finish the season or you probably null and void it. And the priority is to finish it. But I think the null and void situation is probably the least worst option. I think I've seen some of the hybrids that are being discussed, and I can't say I love those ideas. And this is coming from a team that's sitting in the playoff places right now. So it would be very disappointing for us to have to null and void a season, and I can't imagine what it will be like for the promotion teams, or even Liverpool as champions elect in the Premiership. But there's also a reality to some of this stuff, and I'm not sure some of the hybrid options are as fair and equitable as the least worst option of null and voiding it. But I think still our priority would be to finish the season, and also I don't think for the League 1 and 2 clubs especially, playing behind closed doors is the ideal either. You want to get to a position where you can, because you don't want to lose that income if possible, without some level of compensation.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a final one from me before I know James got a few questions as well. Just still on the sporting side, it's probably a question that will be answered a bit further down the line. But have you started thinking about the kind of contract situations of players and management that potentially, when you're having to play the season up to the end of June, you've got players out of contract just after? It's a unique situation. You probably don't know too much now, but have you started to have a think about that?
I would say there's been a lot of conversation. I think it's a conversation the PFA will have to get involved with. It's a concern because you could potentially be in a position where you've got a player out of contract at the end of June, but you're expected to maybe play games right up to the end of June or right up to the end of July, and
they're looking to sign for a new club, or you're negotiating contracts, and they could be signing for that new club the next day after playing a game, and you look at those situations, and they're not good situations to be in, and unfortunately, there's not much you can do about it at this point, but it's something that's going to need to be discussed, and I think everyone is going to have to be willing to understand that you're going to have you're going to be affected by this, and that's where the PFA is going to have a big part to play in terms of player contracts. Because if you say you do go past June, and games are in July, then players technically are out of contract, and could you be in a position where you've got to renegotiate for a player to finish the season? It's not a great situation, but I think it's something that football as a whole we're all in it together, and we've all got to try and solve together.